Welcome students. Today's topic for discussion is sampling methods in social research. Normally, social researches are undertaken to solve social problems. While conducting social research, the investigators are required to collect data from a set of population. Hence, the researcher has to decide basically two essential factors. One is the scope of the study and the other one is the size of the population to be covered. If he decides to cover the entire population, then it becomes a census coverage. Otherwise, the researcher has to select or sample out a representative few from whom the information will be collected. Although we use a technical term, namely sampling in social research, sampling is not an extraordinary thing. Even in our day-to-day life, we go for sampling. For example, when our mother is cooking in the kitchen, if she wants to check whether the rice is cooked, she picks out only one grain from the pot and checks whether all the other grains in the pot are cooked. There is no need to pick the entire lot and decide it. So, this is one kind of sampling. Here the decision is made from only one grain because it is a sort of representative one. A similar technique is also followed in social research also, which we call as sampling. Now, we will see what we mean by sampling in social research. An important concern of a research is sampling of the respondents. In certain type of studies, the whole population in an area could be included for the study. For example, an extensive case study of a small village consisting of 50 households could cover all the households for the study. It is possible for the researcher to meet a single member in each household and interview them for collection of data, and the analysis is also manageable. This method is called census method of data collection, but many times covering or including everyone for the study is not possible. There is a need to collect information from a portion of the population. This is called sampling. The main objective of any sampling procedure is to secure a sample which will reproduce the characteristics of population as closely as possible. Gooden Hat defined sample as a smaller representation of a larger whole. Nanlin defines it as a subset of cases from the population chosen to represent it. By using the characteristics of the subset, we can infer the qualities of the population. The statistical image of the population can be derived by sampling. No particular method of sampling can be considered to be the best because suitable sampling technique is evolved according to the nature of the population and the design of the study. The important factor to remember in sampling procedure is that the sample must be representative, that is, the sample must represent all the qualities and variations that exist in the population under study. The term population or universe used in the statistical parlance is constituted of all the individuals, things or events or documents or observation on a single or many individuals. Objectives of sampling. The main objectives for sampling is to make estimation and to test hypothesis. Both Estimation and testing hypothesis involve making inferences about population under study on the basis of the samples taken. Now, what is estimation? The process of estimation involves making inferences about the population from the knowledge of the sample. The value of any unknown quality is estimated from the information provided by the sample. It permits the researcher to move from specificity to generality. The second one is testing of hypothesis. It is based on deductive thinking using statistical tests of significance. One can establish the validity of sample based on inferences about the population. Now, I will explain the important terms of sampling method. There are many terms relevant to the concept of sampling used frequently by the research works. They need to be explained. The first one is population or universe. Population refers to the aggregate of all units which possess a certain set of characteristics on the basis of which the sample seeks to draw inferences. The term universe is a similar term to population. It refers to the total of all the units in the field of inquiry. Thus, all units in any field of inquiry constitute universe. For example, in a study on smokers in an area, say Chennai, all the smokers in Chennai constitute the population. The universe or a population can be finite or infinite. If it is possible to enumerate all the possible units, then it is a finite population. For example, for a research in a small village or college, the population could be counted, but in the case of the study on smokers, it is infinite. The second one is sampling frame. Sampling frame is the representation or a list of all the elements of target population from which the sample is to be drawn. Usually, in a research, a list of all the units or elements of target population has to be prepared. Sometimes, this sampling frame is already available to the researcher. For instance, the list of units in the Anganwadi or ration card holders or names in the telephone directory are readily available, but many times such sampling frame will not be available for larger studies like patients of HIV/AIDS, in which it is very difficult to collect the names or the total population that is suffering from HIV/AIDS. At such times, the researcher has to prepare the source list, and this is possible for him by contacting many organizations, maybe non-governmental organization, or even it could be through government hospitals. This list could be prepared by the researcher himself. For him, it is not readily available. The third one is sampling design. The blueprint for obtaining a sample from the sampling frame is termed as sample design. It refers to the techniques used in drawing a sample. The fourth one is element or unit. Each sampling unit from which the information is to be collected is called the element. It could be an individual or an institution. In a study on taxpayers, Each taxpayer is considered to be a unit. At the same time, a study in which information pertaining to the whole family has to be collected, then each household is considered to be a unit. The fifth one is statistics or parameter. Parameter is the characteristic of a population. For example, when the mean value age or income is calculated for a population, it is called parameter. The characteristics of a sample are referred to as statistics. If measures like standard deviation are calculated for samples, then it is termed as statistics. That is, characteristics of a sample is called statistics and characteristic of population is called as parameter. The next one is sampling distribution. Sampling distribution is the relative frequency distribution of an infinity. The samples are many, but the size of each and the procedure adopted for selecting the sample is the same. Sample size. Researchers sometimes are confused with the size of the sample they have to decide. The decision on the size of the sample depends on various factors of research issue. These aspects are the nature of population, nature of study, nature of respondents, sampling technique used, complexity of tabulation, availability of resources, and then degree of precision and accuracy required. Now, I will explain one by one. The nature of population. The research samples are either homogeneous or heterogeneous with respect to the characteristics of research interest. Usually, for a homogeneous population, a small size sample is sufficient. In the case of heterogeneous population, a large size of sampling is required in order to make the sample representative. Nature of study. When we do one-time study of great importance covering a large population, we have to take a large sample. In surveys conducted by the government or its agencies, a huge sample is included. In research in which duration is long and continuous study is made, only a small sample size is manageable. Nature of respondents. The nature of respondents is also to be taken into account while deciding the sample size. If respondents are easily available and cooperative, the investigator may go for a large sample, while non-responsive respondents could be covered by a small size only. The next one is sampling technique used. For non-probability sampling techniques, we require to have a large sample. Within probability sampling for simple random sampling, a large sample size should be included. I will be explaining to you about the probability and non-probability sampling in the next class. In the case of stratified sampling, only a comparatively small size could be reached. All these probability, non-probability and stratified sampling I will be explaining to you in the next class. The next one is complexity of tabulation. If the researcher wants to make use of many categories and variables for analysis, the sample size must be large, since each category in the tabulation should have adequate representation. For simple tables, small size is sufficient. Availability of resources. The time and the fund available for the researcher are important criteria in deciding the sample size. If the researcher has more fund and more time, then it will afford for a large sample size. But if the researcher has less money and less time, he cannot opt for it. Degree of precision and accuracy required. The degree of precision and accuracy is high when the research covers a large sample. For example, a study relating to smokers in metropolitan cities, the researcher has to opt for sample size which is larger than otherwise, because the number of smokers is infinite, and therefore he should select as much as 1000 or even 2000 samples. In this study, going for a small sample like 100 or 200 is not sufficient. Characteristics of a good sampling. A good sample should possess some important features. These are: 1. The sample should be representative of population under study. 2. The size of the sample should be adequate to represent the universe. 3. The selection of the sample should be done unbiased and objectively. 4. The researcher should take care that there is no substitution of the original unit by some convenient method. Non-responsive samples should not be included for the study. 5. A good sample will have a high degree of precision. Students, I have been explaining to you some aspects relating to sampling. Sampling is very important in social research because it has some advantages. What are the advantages of sampling? Sampling makes the study less expensive. Sampling is a time saving device. When a small size of total population is studied, the accuracy can be ensured. These are the advantages of sampling. But sampling also has certain limitations. Great care must be taken in the use of sampling technique. Incorrect sampling would lead to inaccurate results. It will be misleading. Sometimes small sample hampers analysis, especially when cross tabulation is necessary. Small sample becomes inadequate in such analysis. Complicated sample may lead to spending of more labor and time. These are the limitations of sampling. Okay students, in this class we have been discussing about sampling, which is an important topic in social research. In the beginning, I explained to you what we understand by sampling. I gave you one or two definitions, and after that I explained to you the objectives of sampling. Next to that, the important terms in sampling method was explained to you, which included population or universe, sampling frame, sampling design, element or unit, statistics or parameter, sampling distribution. Next to that, sample size was explained to you. Under sample size, I explained to you the nature of population, the nature of study, nature of respondents, sampling technique used, complexity of tabulation, availability of resources, and degree of precision and accuracy required. After that, the characteristics of good sampling was explained to you. At the end, the advantages of sampling and also its limitations were explained to you. I am going to pose some questions to you students. 1. Define sampling. Why is it important in social research? 2. What are the important terms of sampling method? 3. What are the features of good sampling? In the next class, I will explain to you few more important aspects relating to sampling. Till then, bye students.